As I meditated on this scripture passage, this very famous story of Lazarus and the rich man, I recall Jesus remarking once that the poor you will always have with you. And it is true, because of our human condition, there is poverty in the world that will always be with us. And yet this parable is not so much about Lazarus, the poor man, but it is about the rich man. And what's interesting to note from the very beginning is that he's someone without a name. He really doesn't have an identity other than the fact that he surrounds himself with sumptuous eating every day, with fine linens. He is like those who are described in that first reading from the prophet Amos, who live comfortably stretched out on couches, who eat lambs taken from the flock, and who drink wine from bowls rather than glasses. They indulge themselves. And so this is a matter not so much of having wealth, but how that wealth in many ways begins to identify who we are, to the point that our own name and our identity is compromised. We have this lavishness about ourselves to the point where we do not even recognize who we are. That can happen to all of us as human beings as we think about the wealth that is given to us. But what's important to keep in mind here is that while the church has always taught the right to private property, it also puts forward to us in the teachings, especially from Pope Leo XIII, and now I think that Pope Leo XIV is going to pick up, a sense that there is a social dimension to the goods of the earth, that there has to be a just distribution of the wealth so that others can have a decent life as well. It is a way in which we begin to see that we are stewards of God's creation, of the goods of the earth, that the common good is promoted by the gifts that we have. That is something that the rich man could not see. And yet, he knew who Lazarus was. He knew his name. Lazarus had an identity, and even though he was poor, he had a name, he had identity. And that's what marks him differently from this rich man. This rich man has lost his identity, but the poor man did not, even in his poverty. And so as we see this story unfold, we also notice that as he goes to that place of torment, he still does not have a name. Abraham does not give him a name because he does not know who he is. God also is not known to him. And that is the most difficult thing about a lavish, opulent kind of life, that not only do we become alienated in our own life and among others, but from God, that we distance ourselves from God to the point that there is a chasm, as we see, between us. And so today is an opportunity for us to reflect on how we use the goods of the earth, the gifts that we have, so that others can have a just distribution of the gifts in the world. It is an understanding that the church has had in a long-standing way, not in a way that denies the right to private property, but also understands that the use of that private property should always have a social context to it in the distribution of goods, simply because we are stewards. And by saying that we're stewards means that we recognize that we, in fact, are not destined for this world, but for life eternal. And when we do that, we really do come to an understanding of our identity as those who are sons and daughters of God, destined to live for all eternity.